Coming up this week, right now, honestly, I feel like for all of this to have even gotten to where we are is nothing short of miraculous. It really is staggering when you stop to just take a step back and look at how significant each piece of the puzzle is in order for the whole thing to work. Well, hello, friends, and welcome to episode 193 of the EV Resource Podcast. I'm Zach Hurst, and each week I bring you the latest EV news, information, and interviews with industry experts. In this episode, I am speaking with Eric Desaulniers, President and CEO of Nouveau Monde Graphite, or NMG, and we're going to be talking about the Canadian EV supply chain. I know we're going to get into a lot of great things. Canada is absolutely pouring billions of dollars of investment into the electric vehicle industry. Before we dive into all of that, I want to give you the opportunity to share with the audience your background and what brought you to your current position with NMG.
Thanks for having me, Zach, in your podcast. Very interesting topic you cover in all the episodes. So I've started to listen at a few, and I will keep my homework and continuing. So we learn a lot of good stuff. So, you know, where it comes from. So I'm a geophysicist by background, so I didn't like geology enough, so I wanted to have a specialty in geophysics. And or maybe 13 years ago, I started the company. So I'm the first CEO. Hopefully not the last. We'll see how long the company lasts. And the idea was to discover the next big graphite deposit when, you know, we started to hear about Elon Musk, about Tesla, about Panasonic building this big gigafactory, 40 gigawatt hour. We were all doing the math and mining how much graphite is needed. So it's a large numbers. In fact, it's about 48,000 tons per annum of graphite is consumed, give or take, for those big gigafactories. So it's large numbers. Like that gigafactory is bigger than any other graphite consumption. You know, it's very big. So we thought, yeah, well, I know how to find graphite. I'm a geophysicist. There's one mine. It's exactly 15-minute air time from here. There's only one mine in North America. It's operated since '89 by Imerys. It's named the Lac des Îles mine. It produced maybe 15,000 to 20,000 a year. Now it's another junior mining explorer who purchased the mine because everyone knows it's near depletion. So we needed to find a bigger one. So that's where I started the company. Nouveau Monde stands for New World, explore for new commodities and with new tools. So let's go find this other graphite deposit. So we were supported initially by moms and and friends and earlier investors that took a lot of risk. And and with Quebec technical funds. You know, there's a lot of funds in Quebec to support us in Canada for early stage exploration. So we were fortunate they appreciated the technical background behind the large scale exploration. I won't talk to you about all the little details, good stuff, bad stuff. But in 2015, Eureka, we discovered this big deposit 2 hours north of Montreal. It's now named Matawini Mine. And we've spent over the year about $200 million to bring the project where it is today, because finding a mine is not enough. You need to transform the concentrate out of the mine into this anode material. So I needed to travel around in Asia. It's 100% controlled by China. So you need to go in China, understand how to do things, meet with suppliers, meet with competitor, hiring some engineers over there so they can come here and help us building capacities. So that's what we did in the last few years until recently, after having developed this large-scale project, having acquired our closest competitor. Now we were fortunate to have Panasonic and GM as a large off-taker and one of the largest shareholders in our company that said to the world, we really need to have the product that you're doing, for our strategy, to make the EV transition live. So that's where we are. So I really started the company at 32 years old, and I'm now 45 years old, and hopefully we'll build this, and I'll see the big profit we'll do out of the money in the upcoming years. Yeah.
When I look at, the way things are currently going in Canada now, but also towards the future, I don't think if everything is run well, which I'm sure you do, that you'll have any problem, moving forward and being a significant part of the overall industry. Canada is investing billions of dollars into EV. Really, the manufacturing supply chain, I guess, is the best way I can describe it. When did that get started? Because it wasn't until maybe a year or two ago that it was coming across my radar. But things like you said, you had started NMG a number of years ago. Has the government of Canada or each province been as on board with all of this for that period of time?
Not all equal, not all equally, I would say. So, you're right. I started a while ago. I was developing this graphite asset because we have this expertise locally, but it wasn't like a clear commitment from our both provincial governments of Quebec and federal government until recently, until really like all America wanted electric car, basically. And I must give a lot of credit to our current government we have in Quebec. We have one very strong Minister of Economy. His name Pierre Fitzgibbon. So he made it really his strategy since day one of his election. I remember him visiting us in 2019. First time he visited our project for a full day to really understand what we are doing, where we fit in, what needs to be done as a government to be successful. And Minister Fitzgibbon himself, like, started to, he was himself like ex-CFO of National Bank of Canada, and he had his own venture capital before. So he's a very successful entrepreneur himself. So he went around and he met many of our customers everywhere in Japan, in Korea, in Germany. He really wanted to understand the whole thing, and we were the first to acquire a land in the middle of the Bécancour Industrial Park. And today it's like there's GM POSCO building a big factory there. There's Ford EcoPro and Eskeon building a huge factory. And there's Nemaska with Livent building the lithium hydroxide plant there. So, and we are the only one doing something on the anode side. So and Nordvolt was also announced right after. So that's all in Quebec, and there's a few others. And then Ontario, we're a bit behind, but they catch up very quickly. There's always this little rivalry between Ontario and Quebec. But they have Volkswagen there, they have Stellantis with LG, and now they have announced as 2-3 weeks ago, Honda building a $15 billion huge facility. So there's a lot going on. You're right, but it's all started by very smart and individuals at the government level who wanted to understand things, and they are making action. So they are their hands into it instead of just hiring consultants and trying to follow recommendation from consultants, and then next election they're gone, and that's it, next one. So they are really involved in the day-to-day. So we have everything needed, like we have the geology right there, and we have the low-cost hydroelectricity. That's very important to transform the product into the anode material. It's very energy intensive, and now we have the customer who wants the product. So we just needed to make the right programs in place to support financially those projects and be smart about picking the right ones, and that's it.
You just answered what my next question would have been, what is it that's unique about that specific area in Canada that is attracting everything? What I understand that you said was, yes, the physical geographical location, naturally you have to have the ability to support that level of industry, but also when it's so finely focused on battery manufacturing, as an example, obviously, that you don't want to be transporting things halfway across the world if it's right there. So that makes a lot of sense. But I think the part that you said that I really want to highlight for the audience is what was built on top of that as a foundation, right? Where you had said it's the individuals in government that recognize the opportunity I'm not intimately familiar with Canadian governments, as familiar as I might be with something here in the US, but generally, governments don't always have the same alignment of goals that private businesses might, or honestly, even that citizens might. So, to show that you have this alignment between the government, private business, especially new business that is seeing the opportunities, and a government that is willing to put down actual money to incentivize that growth, that is very powerful and necessary in so many ways.
Absolutely, no, that's exactly that. But there's so much you need to recognize also as a jurisdiction. We're not so many, here in the province of Quebec. We're 8 million, so we need to focus on our strength and what they are to service this North American market as a whole. Because we need to see ourselves with our friends in the U.S. as a unique continent, I guess, and we need to think about it as a team. And in Quebec, our strength is about the geology. We have great deposits. We have the right geology for graphite, for lithium, for nickel. So I was on a panel yesterday here in Quebec with the GM guys. So there's a specific GM person in charge in Quebec, and he was telling the crowd that the main reason why the GM picked Quebec is because of the proximity to the critical minerals and the fact that the government's very supportive at developing those minerals. And yes, the electricity is very attractive to use that electricity to make a carbon neutral product, affordable because it's low cost, but you need to be in a jurisdiction that is friendly to mining. And it's sometimes a bit difficult south of the border. The permitting is never clear. We are always in Canada, you can pick any of the provinces. There's a clear rules around permitting, so it's a bit easier to mine those critical minerals. So there are advantages around that. But we needed to have a market. We needed to have a U.S. partner that is willing to help those Canadian suppliers in front of the big competition we have from Asia, because they're especially in graphite. Graphite is 100% coming from China today. And for sure, those assets are built in China, so they don't need to amortize those assets. They are heavily subsidized by the government. So for us, it's difficult to compete. So we need to long-term compete on OPEX. We need to be resilient and competitive. We need to provide the quality. However, today we cannot just build a $1.5 billion project here and not have a profit, like sometimes they do in China. So we needed to have a partner like what was announced this week by the Biden administration, a 25% tariff coming from natural graphite from China starting in 2026. And a few weeks ago, the foreign entity of concern was better defined. So in 2027, if our cell maker in the US are still purchasing graphite from China, they might be exempt of all the benefits from IRA. So it's clear statement that we want to work with the partners on establishing this long-term supply chain. So this is a clear, and we need that word to be here now in Canada. So our customer in Canada need to have the same incentive to purchase from us. So since this week, I would say the customer in the US have more benefits to purchase from Canadian supplier than our own cell maker here in Canada, because they don't have the same tariff regime yet. So hopefully it's mirroring what Biden did this week. But that's quite intriguing to see the whole thing being developed in the upcoming few years. Yeah.
It is an incredible time to be alive, where we've not seen some massive upheaval in not just one industry, but in really so many things that affect our lives. The competition with China is a topic that comes up frequently. I feel like the last couple podcasts that I've done have mentioned China, and specifically with Biden and increasing the tariffs on Chinese goods, specifically related to the supply of materials as well as EVs themselves. the question that has come up from that, and to be honest, I don't really quite have an answer, so I'll present it to you. Does that increase in the cost of goods from China, essentially, does that still allow room for North American consumers to have affordable EVs for purchase?
Wow, that's the main question. Huh? Something has to give. Huh? We say that sometimes something has to give. So fundamentally, the big revolution is not quite the EV transition by itself, but it's more that we want the onshoring of all those things to do it ourselves this time. We don't
Yes.
want to rely on China that are 1.2 billion, 1.4 billion. India is big now, so here we're all together. We're maybe 360. I don't know, three with Canada included. I don't know. So it's here in
Yeah.
Quebec, we're 8 million. So all the project I discussed earlier will require. I've seen some numbers yesterday, like 10,000 of new jobs and 25,000 in directs only here. So to
Wow.
do what we do, so and we have minimum wages here. What is it in North America? Everybody has their quality of life, and everybody are entitled to that quality of life. So we need to pay a minimum wages that are quite attractive for graphite miners here. And I'm sure if I'm looking the graphite miners wages in China, it's probably not the same. So we need to be competitive in terms of to attract the best talents. And we're competing with the Nordvolt of this world, with GM now, we're partner with Ford to attract the same pool of talents to build our project. And we require some increase in tariffs so for sure our graphite will be a little bit more expensive than China. And the worst thing is not only a little bit more expensive, but to have it in the quantity needed for the whole EV revolution, we'll need to even have a higher price to be even more incentivized to build more capacity, because 42,000 tons that we're building will be ready in 2027. It's the largest amount in North America. It's only 500,000 EV. And if we want to do millions of EV made in North America, we'll need to rely on China for a while, or there will be a major cost inflation. I agree with you. We need to give somewhere, and we won't go back to 15 million cars sold in North America if those cars are super expensive. So we may do 5 million, I don't know, of EV one year. But what I see happening is in the upcoming years, I'm sure you tried the FSD, full self driving.
Yes.
I've tried. I was in San Francisco a few weeks ago, and I tried Waymo.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
it's amazing. Like it's the full self driving, but like without driver, so you can boost it a bit, just on steroid. So, but it's amazing. We're almost there. If there's only Waymo in the street, it will work. So I see a future where cost inflation of EV car and self-autonomous, the self-autonomous car will be incentivized to be more and more accepted. So we cannot, especially the person living in the middle of a large, dense city, will need to share cars at some point. You cannot have the same. So I see really the vision of Elon Musk and many others, Google and others, will become like, we need that. We just cannot go back to 15 million cars sold in the US. So that's the down point. In the future, we'll need to have enough of one car per two families rather than two car per family. But I agree with you. We need to give somewhere. So if we want the onshoring to be 100% made in North America in a green manner, well made, and like a take your time growth instead of making a crazy growth as China did in the past, we'll need to give somewhere. And I believe we cannot just have a very cheap and affordable car. That's one scenario. And the other scenario is open the importation of BYD, importation of Chinese car, who will be much more affordable long term. But it will come from China, and they won't be manufactured in the same way that we can manufacture in North America. So we need to give somewhere. You cannot have both.
Yeah. And I've found that when I think about what's going on, there's a lot that I fully support. I mean, I don't know that we would find too many people that would argue that we should just open the borders and allow Chinese EVs to flood the North American market. The result of that, most people would probably agree, would be detrimental to our collective economies. So we can't allow that naturally, and certainly the governments are in agreement that that competition needs to be there, if not for any other reason, to give North America time to catch up.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with you. It's a bit like the aluminum smelter we have here. It's a good example. In Quebec, we have 9 of the 10 aluminum smelter in Canada because of our very cheap hydro. And if you look the history of those plants, it's Second World War. The American government just made a loan, 300 million, to a little place named Jonquière, Chicoutimi, where I was born, just maybe 5 hours north of Montreal, in northern Quebec. And they said, build capacity for aluminum using your cheap hydroelectricity. So they built more and more capacity of aluminum, and using the cheap hydro here, even still today, when the price of aluminum is at the bottom and China is kind of dumping aluminum in the market, they're still alive and they're making a good enough profit. And it's now owned by Rio Tinto. Alcoa is also producing aluminum in the province. So it's a similar kind of a energy intensive process to do the graphite. But the thing is, we would not probably build today those 9 aluminum plants because the capex to build those would be big. But they are resilient long term. So that's exactly my words to the government. We need to, as a society, we need to invest in those capex. That's why you see a lot of grants and a lot of support from government to get going in the capex. But we need to think about, is all of this resilient long term with the Chinese? Because Chinese product always find a way long term to get in our economy. So we need to be ready for it. And we are. Like, if you look at our numbers, we'll be able to do a very affordable graphite long term for our Panasonic, GM customer and other. However, we need to build those assets now. So we need early stage of some help to make it happen.
In order for any of this to be accelerated on a timeline that makes it relevant, where left to our own devices, we'd get there eventually, but that might be 2040 or 2050. And by then it's way too late. Like, we need to be moving on this very quickly. Here in the US, public opinion and support for the change in technology is very polarized and very split, with a number of outspoken people, both citizens as well as in the government. I don't think they see the opportunity or see the competition and the risk of inaction. Is that in a similar way in Canada? What you're telling me, the impression I'm getting is that everybody is kind of on board and understands that this is what needs to be done and is moving forward collectively.
Yeah, all in peace without protest? No, it's not exactly like that. There are protests, for obviously. So Nordvolt is in the middle. If you were reading French media here, you would see that Nordvolt is every week in the media. There's protesters on their land all the time, preventing construction, and so it's very polarized. But there's a 10% on each. I like to say, and that's what happened with us on the mining project. It was never 100% support for our project. We're developing a mine in the town, in a small community 2 hours north of Montreal, where it's beautiful and there's many cottages from people from Montreal. So you can imagine. So we always had a 10% against the project, a 10% who would do anything, they don't care. And the 80% in the middle is the important factor. So I'm in the 80% in the middle. I want things to be made properly. So when we are doing survey in the community, we got like 83% support, 82% support. And Nordvolt, they did the same survey, because we're recommended to do that, to show everyone that the noise you hear in the media sometimes are not representative of the reality. And they got, I believe, in the 70% support. But there are people protesting, and that's healthy. We need people against those projects. because people were saying that there was some corner cuts on the environment and the permitting. But I know well the Nordvolt team, they want to build things right. And it's most of us now with the regulators, we want to behave properly. We're a good citizen. We want to do things right, but it's not easy to permit those projects in North America. So I don't know in the US, I know mining is very difficult, and that's something that is overlooked by our customer. It takes 2 years to build a battery plant. It takes 15 years to build a mine. And it's not because we're dumb in construction. A mine is always unique. Every mine is unique. You need to know when you will open the pit, what is the structure, what is the fracture, how the underground water behave, what will be your big impact on the nature in this location. So every mine is so unique. So you need to drill, you need to do a lot of groundworks. And then after you've done all of this planning and all of this permitting, you need to plan only make the little box on top of the deposit that will do the processing plant. But that's the easy part. Our customer only do the box. They only do processing facilities. So that's easy. So sometimes that's why we acquired our closest competitor in graphite, the Mason graphite asset. We acquired all their asset recently because we're sold out on the Matawini mine we're building now. But we know how long it takes to develop another mine. So we need to get going at developing the next one. We don't want somebody else to take it. So we're developing the two most advanced and largest project in North America. And we know long term that's why it's so cyclical mining. So it takes time to bring new capacity on board. We need to have the pricing incentive to do it. And there's a lot of work to do it. And that's where it's difficult to ramp up very quickly a mine without cutting corners on environment, So that's very fascinating to see how we can bring enough mine online in the upcoming 20 years for all of us to have an EV car,
I absolutely love where this conversation is going. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back at it. Turn everyday shopping into savings with the Upside app. Whether it's fueling up, grocery shopping, or dining out, Upside lets you earn cash back on your purchases without limiting how much you can save. You can even combine it with other coupons, discounts, and loyalty programs, so it's a win-win for both you and the business you're buying from. So buy what you need and feel good about it. For more information and to download the app, click the link in the show notes to support the EV Resource Podcast. You said 15 years to get a mine from essentially start to full operations. That is an exceptionally long time. And I imagine one of the greatest challenges in that part of the supply chain is that, at least from the perspective of where I sit in the EV space, I'm looking at things and it feels like they're happening at warp speed, where every day there's a new announcement, either of a project or a new vehicle, or things are changing so rapidly. There's clearly a disconnect between it takes 15 years to get this going and things just moving so fast. How do you navigate that from your perspective, looking forward, going, 15 years, even 20 or 25 or 30 years from now, I have no idea what the world's going to look like or what we could possibly need to support some future electric vehicle fleet.
You're right. You touch a very fundamental point, because it takes so long to build it. And once it's built, it needs to run for 25, 30 years minimum to justify the construction. So that's a generational project, so we cannot bear this risk. And that's why you see most of the mines are commodities that are traded on LME in London, or typically the miners are not taking the commodity risk because it's traded and there's ups and downs, but you can sell futures. There are Glencores of this world, traders who could come and make you an offtake. So the investors of a very specific mining project are not usually taking the risk of the sales of the commodity they will build. In battery materials, there's no, it's all 100% in China. It's not being traded anywhere, graphite. So we need to push that risk to the end users. So that's why it took us very long time to convince Panasonic, GM, that guys, if you want us to build a generational project in graphite, we need to have certainty on the technology. We need to have certainty that we'll sell this product to you for a long time. So we were fortunate to get a 7 years agreement with Panasonic post start of production, which is 10 years total, because it's in 3 years we'll be in production. Same with GM is 6 years. So basically, fundamentally, what they are telling the world is we are confident enough in our current technology. We're confident enough in our current strategy. So we're making those long-term investment, long-term take or pay commitment for us to receive $1 billion loan. You can imagine we need certainty for the lenders to do such a commitment. And that's, we are the first one. It's the first investment from Panasonic in a supplier ever. And they do it in a graphite junior play in Canada. Why they need it? And there's no, don't get me wrong. I don't believe that's something they like to do for fun. There's something that they are obliged to do. There's no major that are doing what we do. It's 100% in China, and there's no Valley, Rio Tinto, name it. They're not doing graphite, so they need to get involved and put their hands in the ground and make sure that we are getting this project up and running in 2027. So the black spice flow in their plant in Kansas for Panasonic, because they rely on us, for the EV transition to happen. If the graphite doesn't come in, and there's something wrong with the Chinese geopolitics, it's all of this is gone, So it's not very it's not fun in the boardroom when you invested billions in your strategy, and so that's why we need to deliver, and that's very important. All of us in this, anything we do that we are supplying those battery plants in the US, we need to deliver. And if somebody is not delivering, it can disrupt a bit our ability to do this stuff here in North America. So, and there's a lot of parallel working stream to end up in a cell like that. That's really the cell making that we are onshoring. Making cars, we know. Making the cell assembly, we know. Making the mine, we know. But anything in between need to happen in parallel very fast, and that's why we need to work as partners.
Especially at the massive scale that is being called for. I find this very enlightening. I'm very confident that I know a lot about EVs and the EV world, and certainly having conversations like this, I learn so much about what I didn't know. Right now, I'm feeling very, not necessarily foolish, but certainly ignorant to the bigger picture, because I am generally very critical of companies. I like to throw Toyota at there a lot because they're not moving fast enough. I need to stop doing that, because what I'm realizing is there's only so much that can be done, especially if the IRA and the part that is essentially rewarding materials and the manufacturing process to be North American based, that all of those different pieces that need to align. Right now, honestly, I feel like for all of this to have even gotten to where we are is nothing short of miraculous. I mean, I am actually stunned in the realization that you have the political aspect, the geopolitical aspect, and I do mean to separate the two of those, right? Where it's easy, at least here in the States, to get caught up with the divided politics. But then if you expand that geopolitically, include private business, to your point, who's going to take the risk for investing the money that needs to be there in order to start this process with fingers crossed, basically, that 15 years from now, that's what we're going to be doing. I am I don't even I don't even know where to
But
go with this because it really is staggering when you stop to just take a step back and look at how significant each piece of the puzzle is in order for the whole thing to work.
yeah, only what we do, you see, it's 1.5 billion for $500,000 for 500,000 EV. Only the little graphite from mine to the finished product. So it's a many billion at least. If you do the math, it's 10 billion. And if you remember, do you remember when they started the Gigafactory first? Like it's the biggest factory in the world, 40 gigawatt hour. So it's a huge thing that Panasonic and Tesla were able to achieve. To make this work and make this becoming a success was a tremendous accomplishment. And now we need to do, and last number I've seen, I think it's 1.5 terawatt hour were of planned capacity in North America. Most of it, not most of it, but a lot of it won't be, let's say 1 terawatt hour to be conservative.
Yeah.
It's 25 times the gigafactory. So 1 gigafactory is okay. So you can have enough material available in Asia, and the logistics of bringing everything to that factory, okay. But doing 25 times that in North American soil, it's now you have logistic concern. You need to build way more mines. You need to permit those mines. So it's a big effort for the society to deliver on this. So that's why I believe in self-autonomous car. We need to share those cars because I don't believe we'll be able to have this 1 terawatt hour of battery capacity as fast as we expect. Maybe it will take 15 years, but maybe not the 5 years we believe,
Right. Do we even have enough material in the ground to support I mean, the number we've been working with is 15 million EVs. Do we
Yeah.
have the material that will support that? And to anybody that might not be aware, that's part of the audience, the reason I think we're probably not talking about too much more than that is once the material is out of the ground, it can most of the time be recycled. So we don't need to account for the future fleet in a number that is continually growing at a
Yeah.
significant rate. But is the material even there to do the 15 million?
Per
Do we
year?
know?
Yeah. But what I like to think, I think it's a billion car in the world now. There's a billion car overall. So probably we'll need to have a billion EV on the planet, and we can hope everything will be recycled, So I think that the fleet in the world, if you think, I think we sell 100 million car in the world per year in the last 10 years on average, and maybe the fleet overall in the world is about a billion car as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Will we be able to do a billion EV? Not sure. So even if there is recycling happening at some point, we'll need at least to generate the minerals for a billion car, or maybe half of it if we can share those cars, So that's quite a large number indeed. It is in the ground, so we're not doing something foolish with a very fancy. There's challenge on the cobalt sometimes that is only mined in DRC, for instance, but there's enough nickel, there's enough lithium, there's enough graphite for that. But it's sitting in the ground, and it takes time to get it out of the ground and build those processing capacities. So it's just a matter of time. And now the challenge is, I know what is it. Since we announced that our production is 85% sold to 2 customers, guess what happens with all the other customers? They're all
Scrambling.
Okay, no, okay, Jesus, you don't have anything available in 2027 finally? No, but we have 6,000 ton remaining. So 6,000 ton is nothing. It's not big enough to move the needle for them. So it's quite fascinating, if the 13 years of work doing this, and then now is the time to build horizontal growth. So, I mean, building more mines, building more capacity, use the expertise we've learned recently. So we have 120 employees with very smart at developing those mines. And it's the same jurisdiction in Quebec. So we need to apply that expertise as fast as possible. make sure we have, when we have all the money coming from customers, from governments, so we need to execute on this and do more of it. We'll be successful doing it, but not in the time frame that everyone is waiting their electric car. You know, there's the new trend that Tesla started is to make a deposit and pray that your car will arrive one day. And you see, this is I made a deposit on a Rivian, I don't know how many years ago. So it
Yeah.
will be longer and longer, the delivery time on electric car, because there's only something missing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got a deposit on the three-wheeled solar EV, the Aptera, and also Cybertruck. So yeah, I mean, they've had my money as a loan at 0% interest for me for however many years it's been now. Um, I'm kind of having a moment where I look at the numbers that we're throwing out of what would be needed to support this massive transition in a time frame that now actually seems maybe even rushed. Like maybe 15 years is rushed. Does this open the door to more conversation about changing the way we view transportation as a whole and looking at maybe alternatives where I've always been of the belief that owning a vehicle is much more than having access to transportation. It's an extension of your personality, of who you are, and in many ways, the way you see yourself, but also want the world to see you. I think that'll be very challenging to, if it's needed, to give that up. Even with robo taxis and car sharing, maybe with the next generation that is coming through and will be driving, I'm not trying to be cynical, but I don't see my generation or those older really hopping on board with this.
Yeah, no, I agree. That will be a bit tough. And I'm living with my father and mother-in-laws here, and they like to have their big truck going to the cottage, and
Yeah,
you know. So and I'm looking at the Silverado EV, 400 miles. It's beautiful. It's GM, so I like that. It's Chevrolet, so my customer. So I'm allowed to buy this one. So yeah, how long can we buy a big car for each of us to transport ourselves? It's a fair question, you know. We'll see, but it's expensive, you know. I'm not about we can pay ourselves those cars, but about the 30% of the poorest of the society who are paid minimum wages, are working mainly in towns in big cities. You know, we need to have more for sure public transportation solution, and it will become a luxury good in the future to drive your car to your cottage in the north, and so we need to appreciate that for sure.
Yeah, I've naturally had the shared goal that I support of transitioning the fleet from petrol, gas, diesel over to an electrified future, or at the very least one where we have hydrogen and maybe renewably sourced propane and so on and so forth in that mix as well. The more we talk about this, the more I am realizing that there is so much that needs to be done from a climate perspective sooner than is possible with only building, let's say, 75 to 100 kilowatt hour batteries. We have to address transportation as a whole and change the way we think about it and approach it. At the very least, I mean, if we include China, certainly the ability to put this all together is there. But then once again, we've got all of the geopolitical aspects that are confusing to a lot of people. It just really, for me, it highlights how important it is that we need to do everything we can do to start now so that by the time a mine is ready or the supply chain, like, I had no idea. 15 years is really throwing me off, to be honest. And so this is really much more important than I realized. And I'm sure a lot of people in my audience are having similar thoughts as they're watching or listening to this.
Google the like average time to develop a mine from scratch.
Uh-huh.
You'll see, like we discovered a deposit 2014, will be in production in 2027, which is very, very fast because it's graphite, everyone needs it. And but from discovery, it takes time because it's cyclical. You have wave of money coming in, and I needed to raise $1 million for my first drilling campaign because no majors are making new discovery. No, they're not exploring themselves, so they rely on the juniors. So that's the real challenge is the ecosystem for mining is built for gold mines and for base metals, and we need to develop it for critical minerals. We need to have those major miners interested into what we do. You need to be bigger, de-risked. So we'll take time before we get those major, interested to develop more assets. And they're not doing it for fun because we need it. They're doing it if they make money, and we compete with all other ways for them to make money,
Of course.
And they still build some coal mine, because they know how to make money developing coal mines. So there's some major that are, still very interested on developing coal asset.
Well, that's a shame.
That's a shame. Yeah.
Let's look at, let's say, the very near future. Call it the next 5 years. Actually, let's expand that. Let's go to 2030. What would you say are the most important factors that need to be in place for the advancement of electric transportation that are already in the works? Something that's already been established. It just needs time to mature. Can you think of maybe 3 that come to mind that highlight the relationship between Canada and the United States from a manufacturing standpoint?
Yeah, first of all, and the most important in my view, is the projects that are being built now deliver on time, on budget, and they are successful and they make money. So the GM of this world, Ford of this world, and all the ones that are developing a project are happy to do it again. So they need to keep expanding. So, and it doesn't give ammunition to the naysayer that's saying, you see, we should go back to a petrol-based economy because we know this, especially in the US, you're probably autonomous on energy on the petrol economy. Compare critical minerals as something to build. So hopefully we demonstrate before 2030 that we have very clear success in few of those car makers, so we can keep doing it. Justify keep doing it, and nobody is in bankruptcy because they tried too hard, in the wrong way. So to me, it's the most important thing. And we need also to make sure that we maintain good relationship in the meantime with China and other partners, because we need them. If you do the math, just last year, I think we did 1.4 million EV sold in the US market. So this 1.4 million EV, give or take, requires 140,000 tons of graphite. That comes 100% from China. So if we need before 2027, keep doing a little bit growth out of this number, maybe 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 this year. I don't know, the growth is slowing down a bit, but it's still a growth. We still need graphite coming from the other end of the planet. So we need to have enough, we stay enough friends in the meantime, so there's no big disruption. Because if tomorrow China says, no, that's it, I'm just selling car in the future, it will be hard for the current plant that operate in the US, like the Gigafactory in Nevada, that procure 100% of the graphite in China. to keep going, waiting for us in 2027. So there's a transition. It's really a transition where we need to be humble and understand that we need to import that stuff for a little bit, and we need to give enough incentives to make new producer like us and like the Livent to grow, and the Lithium of Americas project in on the West Coast to be successful as well. So we need those things to be successful. To me, that's the most important thing.
It's become very clear to me that we need people in positions to be able to affect geopolitical relationships. We need those people to be as educated as they can be about all of this, but then also to be very level-headed and open-minded. That more than ever, regardless of political leaning, I don't even want to go to that, but in terms of the way they operate, they need to really understand how complex this is and be reasonable and not reactionary. They need to be proactive
and patient.
Patient. I love that you put that in there, because yes, very, very much so. Well, honestly, I've enjoyed speaking with you very much. We could keep going, I'm sure, because it seems like there's never an end to talking about.
Let's reconnect in the near future to see where it goes.
Yeah,
it's very fascinating.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to do that. Before we end the podcast, I do like to ask my guests 2 questions, where at the beginning you said you've been listening to a couple, so maybe you already know what's coming here. And the first question is, what do you drive? And you kind of touched on that earlier, I think.
I'm driving since 2017 a Tesla Model X 100D. And since 2019, a Tesla Model 3 Performance, obviously, because it's addictive, huh?
Oh, yeah, that's a fun one, for sure.
I heard you saying the right foot is addictive, something like this.
Yes, that is the best form of drug when used responsibly, I guess, is a good way of putting that.
And I drove it the first time in 2019. We drove all the way to California from the East Coast here in Canada.
Wow.
Just to test the supercharging. I visited the Gigafactory in Nevada, I visited Fremont, Tesla. And, I did a big trip in the US to discover how easy it is. With all the kids, flying is expensive. So let's use the Tesla Model X at its best.
Yeah, well, and it's spacious enough for a long road trip that I'm sure it was quite comfortable as well.
It is, but the two kids that were too loud, we were putting them in the far back seat. So that was the penalty box.
So the last question is a play on the word drive, where instead of what do you drive, what drives you? What is your primary passion that is moving you forward in life, even outside of work, if that applies?
It's definitely to make a difference since the beginning and make a positive difference. And it's important shareholder, but I really feel that the future of corporation is not only a shareholder to please the shareholder, but it's to please the stakeholder. So when I go in the community every Christmas where we develop the mind with my kids, and I see the impact it has on them, what we're doing, and I see even now my 18 years old just started to work for the company this year. So we do he's going at college part-time and part-time in the school, part-time in the plants. So it's making a difference. Like out of nothing, we created and we have 100 employees. We have a lot of impact in the society, and now it's very interesting for all of us, like, to know that we're working hard on this little project in Canada, and we are important for Panasonic, for Tesla, for this EV transition. So it's really the purpose of making a difference and being important in the EV transition. Yeah, we want to make money. That's important, but to eat every day and to sleep and have a roof and a car. That's important. That's why you need money. But what drives me more is the purpose behind everything we do at NMG. This is very enlightening. Is it a word in English? Enlightenment?
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, Eric. I genuinely hope that the audience feels even that they are affected at least half as much as I feel like I have been. This has been incredibly insightful. And I have a feeling that as a result of speaking with you, I'm going to probably make a number of maybe micro adjustments to the way I think about the coming years in this space, but also definitely the way I speak about it, with hopefully a little bit more grace and understanding at the timelines and the massive complexity that is so important and has to be there in order for this to even happen. So genuinely, I want to thank you very much for joining me on the podcast to speak about this. And yes, certainly, I would love for us to reconnect maybe a year or 2 or 3 down the road when you're up and running to check in and get an update at that point.
Let's do that and continue your great work on your podcast. Very important to educate all the crowd and share all our learnings together. So I'll keep listening. Thanks a lot, Zach.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure, for sure.
If you've enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please subscribe to wherever you like to watch or listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you're looking to stay plugged into the EV community, head over to ev-resource.com for the very best educational resources, community connections, EV reviews, and a whole lot more. The EV Resource Podcast is a production of EV Resource and is supported by viewers and listeners just like you. Members of the EV Resource Patreon family are, at the Director tier, Rajeev, Narayan, and Andy Cooper. At the Executive Producer tier, Christopher Lawrence. If you're interested in ad-free episodes of the podcast, EV Resource merchandise, support recognition, and more, head over to patreon.com/EVResource. If you have any feedback, please email hello@ev-resource.com and put podcast feedback in the subject line. I've been your host, Zach Hurst. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and we'll catch you next time.